crucial debate for two candidates tonight, Zach. We saw, I don't want to say as many fireworks as we saw in 2020, maybe because the mic muting helped that. There was a rule there, but we definitely saw some shots fired. I want to say that both of these candidates, they came in tonight trying to prove something. President Joe Biden was trying to prove to the world that part of it was that he was fit to serve, that he has the policies that's going to keep the country moving in the direction that he has brought us in almost 4 years, while former President Donald Trump wanted to combat the concerns that he was outlandish and that his policies were going to take us back to a better America. And some of those policies, Zach, you have.
Yeah, and I think, anybody who watched the debate tonight knows it lasted about 90 minutes. There was a lot discussed. I think in some ways viewers may have noticed there was more substantive policy discussion, or at least more substantive policy questions than in past debates, in part because of that CNN instituted muting rule. Three big takeaways that I think stood out to me and probably a lot of viewers. First, you mentioned there were questions about President Biden's ability to stay on track and stay focused. Some voters have expressed concern about his age. There were moments where he seemed to lose his train of thought, lose track of the answer he was giving, particularly early on in the night. Another big takeaway, that was not always the tenor of the debate. There were also high energy interactions between former President Trump and President Biden, including one memorable exchange over the future of access to abortion care, which is, as we know, a key issue for so many voters. The last big point, Faith, I want to flag here, former President Trump, he was asked point blank if he will accept the results of the 2024 election.
It's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did.
In some ways, keeping open the door to relitigating the 2020 debunked claims of a fraudulent election.
And that is an answer that we've heard him and several of his surrogates give as they've been asked in the last couple of months. There was an exchange that got a little bit of laughter, a challenge on the golf course, I remember.
I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to turn.
Let's not act like children.
So you can have some moments of levity, even in serious political moments. But I think the tenor generally tonight was a pretty serious conversation. And then you, for those who don't know, we're in the spin room right here, what's known as the spin room. This is where surrogates for both campaigns come out. They flood the red carpet here, and will tell anybody who will listen that their chosen candidate is the right choice. Faith, you were down on the red carpet in the spin room where surrogates were coming out. What did you hear? What stood out to you?
So we spoke to a couple of surrogates. One of them was Vivek Ramaswamy, as we know that he was trying to get this job at one point, and now he's just been a very staunch supporter of the former president. I asked him, hey, do you think he went out there and did his job to garner the support of the 8%, according to that AJC poll, of undecided voters that are heading into this election? And he said, you saw the debate. We believe that he did his job. He laid out the policies, and we think he did a good job. Rep. Matt Gaetz, same thing, and he criticized Joe Biden and what you were saying, that he kind of seemed a little slow at times. Matt Gaetz didn't say it in those words, but he had his own words for that. On the Biden camp, we heard from Senator Raphael Warnock, who says, you know what, this country was better under Joe Biden than it was under the former president. So that's your choice here. That it was better, period. And that is kind of the mood that we're hearing. When we are on the spin floor, you're going to hear the party lines from both sides of the aisle, but people are going to, I mean, this really set the stage for what we're going to see. There's a lot of time between now and November. There's supposed to be another debate in September. And if that does happen, we will see, and voters maybe will make up their minds by September.
Everybody who votes will have definitely made up their minds by November. Experts say that debates, particularly this year where there are so few scheduled, can set the tone for the remainder of the presidential race. Good news, you heard Faith allude to it. We heard from a lot of folks. We heard from both the president and the former president, of course, on the debate floor, but a lot of others too.
I also didn't mention Laura Trump was here. I'm trying to think of other people that we talked to.
We've been
A ton.
busy. Everybody
And
out.
there's still people out there right now.
It's been a busy evening. Take a listen in here. You can hear from everybody we talked to. Listen in.
To me, that was just daylight and darkness. I'm a little old-fashioned. I care about substance. I care about policy. I care about facts. I care about people being accountable to their lies. What I saw tonight was Donald Trump, weakness masquerading as strength. A guy who was incapable, as the senator said, answering any question directly, obfuscating, pointing fingers, and more important than anything else, disgusted by the fact that I heard ex-President of the United States talk down the American economy, talk down the United States of America to the degree he did tonight.
Sir, what about the president's
As it relates to the president, on the substance, on the compare and contrast and economic record, where just in the last 3.5 years, that 15.6 million jobs represents 8 times more jobs in the last 3 Republican presidents combined. A 3% GDP growth, envy of the world, where we're seeing inflation tamed down 2/3, an economic policy and a vision for the future to bring back American manufacturing. I was very proud of the president tonight. So from my humble perspective, this is not about style. This is about delivering results for the American people. And tonight, I think Joe Biden not only asserted himself, he reminded people of his accomplishments and his vision for the future.
This president has family members who don't love him, because any loving family member would not put a man like this through the hell that they're actually putting him through. The only times he came alive, Joe Biden did during the night, the only times he had even a spark of life to him was when he's talking about January 6th, was when he's talking about Trump's convictions. He doesn't actually give a damn about the issues that affect Americans. He only gives a damn about the issues that try to actually dunk on Trump. And I think it's a great thing that, President Biden came across as the guy who was the mean guy in the room. See, people talk about President Trump and his social media tweets and the things that they might find mean about them. I actually think President Biden came across as the more begrudged gentleman in the room tonight.
Donald Trump was not answering questions that he was asked.
Do you think there might be polls amongst Democrats, I know you're not a Democrat, to replace him?
But the fact of the matter is this man cannot continue as maybe even make it to the end of this term as the President of the United States. I have deep concerns for our own country, even for the next 6 months with this man in charge. When you think about the greatest threats that we have faced in our lifetime to the homeland of the United States of America, and that this is the man who's the commander-in-chief supposedly making those decisions, that should be frightening to every American. And I do think that we are due for a Democratic Party that has a reckoning ahead of it to say that if this man is the best they could put up, that says everything you need to know about the modern Democratic Party.
Vivek, do you think that Trump won?
Unambiguously.
Do you think that Trump won this debate tonight? Do you think he performed how he went out there and did his job and convinced those undecided voters, including the 8% here in Georgia, that he is the guy for the job?
I think he did. He exceeded my already high expectations.
Hi, Laurel.
Do you think the people in Georgia will support President Trump this year?
I do, and I certainly think anyone who watched that debate can no doubt come away knowing that Donald Trump is the true leader and the leader we need.
And how do you feel about your new position right now? How are you doing? Any plans looking to November?
Well, I'm honored to be here. We're working hard. We're raising a lot of money. We're making sure we have a free, fair, and transparent election, and I think that's vital to the future of the country. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I represent Texas, and we know that abortion is on the ballot. And to be clear, tonight we saw 2 things. People can choose between a con-in-chief or a commander-in-chief. And so what we saw was someone who sat up there and was acting as if he was some used car salesman that wanted to just tell us whatever and pretend as if it was fact. The reality is that our president submitted to you what looks like substance. The substance of the issue is simple. We have somebody that is bragging about the fact that he took Roe v. Wade away from us. Whereas we know the next step. They've gone after mifepristone. They want to go after contraception. And unfortunately, in the state of Texas, they're talking about instituting the death penalty. What the American people have to decide is that they're going to choose themselves. This election isn't about all of the lies that Trump is selling you. What it's about is the facts. The facts are that he took that right away from us, and he wants to take more rights away from us, and he did not shy away from it. Every time he didn't want to answer a question, he just decided to deflect. The reality is that people are dying. We had over 26,000 women that were impregnated in the state of Texas alone in the last year since the Dobbs decision as a result of rape. That is unacceptable. You all know the story of Kate Cox. You know the story of Dr. Denard. You know the story of women that are potentially losing their lives. And so there is only one clear choice, and that clear choice is Joe Biden and the blue team. And that's exactly why we're here.
I think first of all, let's be very clear. What you saw tonight was a clear contrast between a good man that we believe in, that is going to win re-election, and a con man, a criminal, and a traitor to this country. Let's also be very clear. Donald Trump tonight doubled down on his anti-immigrant rhetoric in the debate. He called somehow that immigrants are creating a rat nest in this country, that we're an uncivilized country because we bring immigrants in. That is offensive to the Latino community and to immigrants who have helped build the United States. As an immigrant myself, I'm disgusted at his rhetoric tonight. He's the most anti-Latino president that we have had in decades. And one other thing. He also tonight lied again, especially about COVID and the pandemic. I lost 2 parents to the pandemic. One was actually a healthcare worker, my mother. And Donald Trump stood up there and lied about the pandemic while he was telling people to inject bleach, to not take the vaccine, and cause more harm to this country when he was president than any president that we have seen. So Joe Biden tonight did what he needed to do, which was deliver a message about substance. We're proud of him, and we're going to win in November.
Great. And finally, and we're going to get to everybody's. We're going to get the questions, but before we begin, Mary Trump.
President Trump will secure the border, he will save our economy, he will restore our standing in the world, and he will end the wars. I think that's what voters want in both political parties. And no matter what Joe Biden's campaign says, you saw a man who cannot execute on anything. He cannot execute on presidential vision. He could barely execute pre-planned, pre-canned lines in the debate. So I would encourage folks here in Georgia, if you want to see these interest rates come down, if you want to be able to buy a home, if you want your place of work to be growing and not contracting, you need to get out and vote for President Trump.
Earlier today, we talked to Governor Brian Kemp, and I asked him, hey, look, there are people who might like Trump's policies, but they do not like him. They don't like his character. They don't like what he represents. They don't feel like it's a person that their kids can look up to. How can he get around that? His character flaws that some people feel like he has.
I saw someone on stage tonight displaying a focus and a seriousness that ought to really reassure those voters, reassure them that he's going to fight for them. President Trump's policies improved quality of life for people. Even people who didn't agree with him saw bigger paychecks, they saw cheaper gas, they saw their purchasing power go farther at the grocery store and when they were paying for electricity. And so you don't have to like President Trump to vote for him.
Do you just forget about the things that you don't like, though?
Well, you just have to like yourself. If voters care about their own economic conditions, their own safety, their own hope for a better future for the country, then they should vote for President Trump.
Mayor Dickens, first tell me what brings you out here and what did you think of the debate tonight?
Yeah, tonight I'm here to support our president, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris, our vice president. So I came down here after the debate to make sure I laid eyes on Joe Biden and Jill Biden and to really talk to this public, all these great fans of Joe Biden right here tonight at the Hyatt Regency.
And what did you think of the debate? What were your big takeaways?
Yeah, that was 90 minutes of individuals trying to explain themselves to the American public. Tonight you saw questions being asked of Joe Biden and President Biden and Donald Trump, and it was a tough thing to watch. It was really trying to explain what we've done for the public and what we will do. And what we saw was Donald Trump telling lies about what he did and what his presidency led to, but it really led to 34 counts that he's been convicted of as a felon. And then you saw Joe Biden trying to explain what he's done so far and what he plans to do in the future. And I think that Joe has to tighten up his message. I'll be honest about that. That is something that we have to make sure we get clear to the campaign that, hey, there's some winning points. You brought down unemployment. You really brought back a lot of jobs. You brought back this economy after COVID. You really did bring down insulin costs, and you really stood up a lot of infrastructure for the people of America. Speak clearly, talk plainly, talk confidently. Joe Biden has done a magnificent job in supporting cities, and I'm standing with him.
Of a nation. They are about jobs, they're about the economy, they're about war and peace, about a whole range of issues. But at the end of the day, it's really about the character of a country. And the American people got a chance tonight to be reminded about the character of Donald Trump, a man who stood there and lied for 90 minutes straight. But what I was also struck by was by what he did not say. Every time he was asked a question that had something to do with the lives of the ordinary working class people that I represent here in the state of Georgia, did you notice he never answered the question? When he was asked about child care, which is a real issue in this country. A lot of people can't get to work because they don't have child care. He didn't have an answer for that. He tried to take credit for capping the cost of insulin and prescription drugs. Well, I know that's a lie because that's my bill. I passed it, and Joe Biden signed it into law. When it came to anything having to do with ordinary people, he reminded us that this man wants to do the only thing that he's ever done, and that's focus on people like himself. That's why he passed a tax cut that went to the richest of the rich on the backs of ordinary working class poor people, middle class people. We passed a tax cut, the largest tax cut for middle and working class people in American history. He's trying to divide us. And we've got to make sure that we stand up as a nation, stand up for the American covenant, e pluribus unum, out of many, one, and we should always be afraid of somebody who's telling us to be afraid of each other. That's Donald Trump. America's better than Donald Trump, and I believe that come November 5th, the American people are going to stand up once again and prove it as they did in 2020.